Assalamu alaikum, Saif.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Actually, I didn't think you would let me in because I
Yeah,
noticed
I
that
was
you've been
actually.
going on for so long.
No, we have been going on. You've kind of frozen, by the way. I don't know.
Uh,
Let me
is it
try and add
moving
you
now?
again. Wait there. No, it's not. Wait there. Let me add you again. Uh, let's see. Nope, it's coming up just as a. I mean,
A
I can see
picture?
your screen is clear, but it's not coming up. It's coming up as a black screen there on the screen. So, although I can see that you have activated your camera, but I don't think people can see it.
I'll try to
Um,
stop the camera and reactivate it. Maybe it would work.
sure. Yeah, maybe.
Now?
No, why is that? It seems to be just going. See, like when you stop it, I can see the S that comes
Hmm,
up. When you activate it, why does
that
it not?
is strange.
That is very
Uh,
strange. Look at that. Oh, you a
but
ghost. Allah.
regardless, Mufti, I don't want to keep you waiting
Sure,
for so
sure,
long.
sure. No problem.
I just
Yeah, yeah.
have a couple of questions. I have DM'd you on Instagram, but I believe you wasn't able to see my DM. So my first question is I've come across one of your videos, and I believe you've said that it is permissible to wish non-Muslims on their Ayad, like Merry Christmas or for Chinese New Year or whatever. So a friend of mine who is a Shafi'i, and he has a PhD in Usul al-Fiqh, if I'm not mistaken. He's a very close friend of mine, and of course we disagree on everything because his views are a bit too extreme for me. So he has quoted that the Malikiyya, and to be specific, Al-Qarafi, said that التردد إلى الكنائس في أعياد النصارى فنحكم بكفر فاعله وإن لم تكن هذه الأمور كفرا. So I wanted to ask about is there any other view from the past Malikis that besides yourself, because you're a Maliki yourself, besides yourself, from the
Uh,
past that uh, says it is permissible to wish non-Muslims well on their ayad?
you see, I'm not quite. Your question is. It's a very good question. It does. Okay, in some. Let's try to tackle it a bit. Obviously, we're limited on time, but I'll try to
Yes.
tackle it a bit. Now, the question is that look, some when you look into historical data, you find many scholars. You quoted possibly Qarafi, saying
Yes.
that if we see someone going to ilal kanais, yataraddad ilal kanais, فنحكم بكفره وإن لم يكن كافرا or something. And so we will deem them to be from the kuffar, even if they are not kafirs, but that's how we're going to deem them because they're going to churches. Similarly, people quote Imam Abu Hanifa that saying, if a person gifted an egg to a person on the New Year or whatever it was, the Persian Neiroz, then we will consider him a
Yes.
kafir and things like this. Now, the question is that you see, at a simple level, it is it's fine that
Mm.
actually the S thing might work better because there's just a
Okay.
black screen.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'll
so
just put the S.
yes, so the um you see, at a simple level, this is a very simple question. One may say that, look, it's simple. People have said it before. Where are the other people saying the opposite before? I know you've got a lot of people today saying it. So, like I mentioned, I've got an article on Facebook where I show the differences. Many of the ulama of Al Azhar, Sheikh Abdullah bin Bayyah, who's also Maliki. You'll get many people even in Morocco, and you get people on both sides. You get people who say no, you get people who say yes. So, I quoted Sheikh Ali Al Jifri, who's Shafi'i. You mentioned your
Yes.
Shafi'i friend. So, you'll get people who will say it's absolutely permissible. You get people who say it's not permissible. But that's today. Why can't you find this in the past? Now, that's because they're expecting a very simple answer from what is a complex
Mm.
equation. And the complexity is that the phenomenology has changed, but they're not taking that into the equation. See, like I'm asking, you see, the concept of identity has changed in the last, since modernity. It is now identity is viewed differently throughout all humans today. It was not viewed in this way previously. Now you can't, you see, if you divorce that factor, you don't factor it in, you've missed a huge part of the equation. You're basically trying 2D with something that is 3D, because what you're saying is that, well, look, today, identity has become reshaped. Identity today, um, it's how it integralizes it, how it kind of manifests itself to people is very different. So in the past, your marker of your community may have been done by your faith. Faith
Yes.
in the past was in many ways the equivalent to, I don't know, in some ways, like a visa system, a passport system. It could have as well. Like, so for example, you could have access to certain lands in a certain way reflective of your faith. Just as today you want to go to a certain country, they ask you, why do you want to come here? Depending on your passport, they may allow you, they may ask you, are you coming here for tourism? Are you coming here for work? What do you want? They don't give everybody a visa. If somebody just wants to come to the UK for tourism, many countries won't get a visa. Doesn't matter if they want to come for. In the past, you see, you entered into a dhimma state. You want to
Okay.
come into Muslim lands, you have to, well, what faith are you? There will be certain taxes on you. There will be certain things. Muslims, same thing. In non-Muslim countries, you weren't safe or as safe. You may be a second-class citizen. You may have to wear certain colors in certain countries, certain parts of the world. You may have to wear a certain, like a symbol to show that you are part of a certain faith. You weren't allowed to dress in certain ways because it may resemble the other people. You see, their faith or the exhibitionist aspect of faith was tied into many greater socio-political factors. You can't divorce, like historically, when looking historically, you can't divorce that just because today it's divorced. So today, there's been a complete inversion of faith. So religion has become incredibly private in many parts of the world. It is a private affair. So personally, as Islam began privately, it didn't begin
Yes.
as politics, but today in many parts of the world, it's reverted to that. And the hadith said, as Islam began, it will turn back to in the end. So it has become in many parts of the world a private affair. And the socio-political factors of identity are now markers manifested or instantiated by other realities like passports, visas, your flag, your allegiance, your nationality, your sexuality, your so many things have become identitarian markers. Faith is not really one of them in many parts of the world, especially the developed world. Faith is not one in the developed world. In other parts of the world, it may still be an important integral factor of identity politics, but it isn't in definitely not in Europe or in the modern world. Now it may be used negatively, so people may discriminate against you based on your identity of faith. So they see you as a Muslim and don't give you a job. But otherwise, it's not, you see, it also ties into racial politics. And
Yes.
obviously it's coming back in, but that's in a negative, not in a contributory way. So it's kind of by absence playing a part. So generally here in this part of the world today, let's say you're not a Muslim. Let's say you're a regular, I don't know, Jack, John, whoever you are. Whether you celebrate Christmas or not doesn't mean anything. You're not going to get a well done from Boris Johnson. You're not going to get it doesn't mean anything. You're not going to be more protected because this person celebrated Christmas. By the way, he's a first class citizen. It doesn't mean anything. You whether you choose to celebrate Christmas or don't celebrate Christmas, whether you say you're a Christian, if you're John or Jack or Dave or whoever, nobody cares for the most part. So the question is today, you see, you're looking at a world that where the lens is entirely different. So when you go back in time, you can't take this lens because the world was different. So when you're asking me about an 8th century medieval scholar who lived in a time where religion was a key and one may say even a primary marker of identitarian socio-political realities. You cannot detract that. You cannot say, well, oh, why weren't they so relaxed about you wearing a cross back then? Because, or why, of course, if they saw you going into a church, they didn't really, there were huge issues. I mean, Ibn Battuta speaks about India, and it's part of our, actually, this book of the month we're reading Ibn Battuta. Now, Ibn Battuta, when he describes India in his time under the Muhammad Shah ibn Tughlaq, and there's Muslim dynasties and sultans, he explains how the Hindus, for example, even though they don't harm Muslims, he says they do not interact with us. They do not engage us at all. He said they'd never, if we need help, like he said they will never offer us food. They will never, they just keep themselves separate from us. He said, like Muslims, obviously they know who we are. They can tell by our identity once again, but he said they do not interact with us at all. You see, he said, although they don't harm us either, but they don't display any acts of compassion towards us either. Now, can you see a world like that? That world right now doesn't exist like this. I'm not saying in some parts of the world, but in the developed world, it doesn't. You see, you just because, or it shouldn't. Here today, if you're a Muslim, technically people will not openly, it shouldn't really be, or let's put it by their law. Let's not inverse it. If you're a Christian here today, it doesn't mean anything. Or if you're an atheist here, let's say Dave down the road is an atheist, people don't isolate him.
Yes.
So
Absolutely.
this question back then in Qarafi's world, when he lived in Egypt where there were Coptic Christians who sometimes had issues with Muslims and sometimes Muslims had issues with them. Sure, if he saw a person that constantly went in and out of the church, who would he assign them to? To the Muslim group or to the Copt group? Of course, it assigned them to the Copt. It's like saying, if you lived in Ibn Battuta's time and you were in India and Ibn Battuta came across you and you only hung out in the Hindu circles and you did not come to the Muslim circles, who would he think you are? Obviously, he's going to think you're a Hindu because he's going to associate you by, simplistic, discriminatory kind of elements. So this is a fallacy to today look at the world and say, well, why didn't Nawawi say this then? Why didn't Ibn Abdul Bar say this? Why didn't Ibn Hajar say this? Because their world was different. I'm pretty sure if they lived in a world like ours, many of them would have vocalized it.
That's a very, very deep insight and explanation, Mufti. And just to go back to your last sentence, you said if they lived in our world, they would be more open-minded and they would view it in
It's
a
not
different
about,
way.
oh, yeah, it's not about them being open minded because you see, I feel they were open minded for their context
Okay,
because they lived in a
understood.
world where people were like that. So if they were in our world, I feel many of them would see this differently because they would see it like from our world perspective. I'm sure there would be a difference. There would be some that won't and many that would. There would be both two camps, just as there is today.
Yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. Just as
Yeah.
there is today. And I'm living in Malaysia, so Malaysia
Oh wow.
is a Muslim majority country, obviously, but they do celebrate all Ayad here because there
Yeah,
is like
yeah.
about 33% of the population is Chinese Buddhist, and there is
Wow.
about
Okay.
19% who are Hindus. So
Okay.
they
Wow.
celebrate everything here. Everything is a public holiday, which is amazing. Christmas is the Thai Pusam is Deepavali, Chinese New Year, and
Yeah.
of course the Ayad
Yeah.
of Adha and Eid al-Fitr.
You see, today the world is a different place, and really we find the teachings from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, teaching about honoring human beings and showing respect for them in their differences. Now, obviously, when they're not clashing with you, obviously, when it's not conflictual, then they should just be harmony. It's like the Prophet ﷺ standing up. The Jewish funeral is going by.
Yes.
It's a Jewish funeral. It's not a Muslim funeral. It's a Jewish procession. Stands up. out of honor, out of respect, out of that showing that kind of community love, that spirit. That look, he said it was alive. She was Jewish. Yeah, this is the Jewish practice. They're doing it in a Jewish way. They're taking their burial, but still, we show respect. And yeah, and I think people often forget that even the first covenant of Medina, "Nahnu ummatun wahida," we are one ummah. And and fine, if people don't want to, I'm not saying people need to be celebrating things or need to be going around saying Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas. Don't need to say anything. You can just stay at home and just chill. But if a person wants to, there are ulama that say that, and if a person doesn't want to, there's ulama that say that. Both have their evidences, both have their reasons, both have their factors. And whatever a person, it makes them a better human being. If this makes you a better human being, do it. But just don't, it's your thing. Don't impose it on someone else. That's all. Yeah.
Absolutely, Mufti. Thank you very much for your time.
Shukran,
I know I
Saif.
kept you
Shukran,
too
yar.
late.
It's shukran.
Been following you for a very long time. Thank you very much
I
for everything
appreciate
that
that,
you
man.
do,
I
and
appreciate it.
appreciate you a lot.
Cool. Send me another message and I'm going to look out for your profile, man. Take care
Inshallah,
and much
inshallah.
love.
Salam
Okay,
alaikum.
take care. Assalamu alaikum. People, that was Saif from Malaysia. Very interesting discussion. See, this is my thing. I get carried away when I start talking. I need to shoot off. So, people, it's been a pleasure as always.